At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Mr. Ken Meyer, our commissioner, so us to get started. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you. Can you hear me loud and clear, Stella?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BACP Empower Hour. I'm Ken Meyer, Commissioner for the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. Our goal is to help provide businesses and consumers get the information they need to succeed by sharing advice and stories from Chicago's entrepreneurs. In honor and in recognition of Black History Month, today's Empower Hour guests are a mother-daughter duo, Eboni Howard and her mom, Peggy Howard, co-owners of Ebb and Flow Yoga. The yoga studio is located in Wicker Park, provides a space for communities seeking deeper meaning, better health, and a way to sustain an inner peace amid hectic and stressful lives. I believe this is something we can all benefit in all of our lives. So good afternoon and welcome, Eboni and Peggy, and thank you for joining us. Before we get into your business concept, please tell the audience a little bit about yourselves. And why don't we start with you, Eboni, and then we'll go to your mom.
Sure, thank you. Well, thank you for inviting. I'm really excited to be here and hope that we can share information that's helpful for others as they think about their own small business. I have been in Chicago for most of my life. I moved here when I was 17, and I'm not 17 anymore for school. Went to the University of Chicago and Northwestern University and have worked and lived throughout the city. Almost every neighborhood in the city, I have had my residence at some point or time during my time here. I have two children, and I also work in another industry. I am an education consultant, especially on early childhood education issues. So I worked with the city on early childhood and the preschool for all, so everybody needs to do that. And so it's nice to also talk about a business today. So thank you very much again for having me.
That's great. Thank you. And Peggy?
Hi, I live in Madison, Wisconsin. Now I'm originally from New York City, came to Madison to go to college. I retired from a corporate career as a vice president in finance of an electric utility and energy company that served 4 states in the Midwest. That was probably, I will say, my 3rd career, but I started my career as a mental health social worker and then secondarily got into Wisconsin gubernatorial politics and held a number of appointed positions under various governors in the state of Wisconsin. I have 1 child, which is Eboni, and one of my other careers was also an entrepreneur. At the same time, I was pursuing my corporate career, and I owned a restaurant club in Madison. So that was my first getting my toe wet in entrepreneurship.
Wow, that is really, really fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can you share the story of how Ebb and Flow was created and give us a little, what was the significance behind the name Ebb and Flow?
Sure. So I was, I guess, an athlete. I used to play basketball in college. I also used to do triathlons and a lot of fitness work. And I got injured. And, as you age, your body changes, and the things that you can do at 20 just shifts in your 30s. And as many people know, keeps shifting. And I was finding myself confused about what to do after being an athlete for so many years of really kind of hardcore working out all the time. And one of my friends said, "You should try yoga." And I was like, "This is yoga. Don't you have to be flexible, or don't you have to be zen, or don't you have to sit still for a long time? I don't know if yoga's for me. I don't do this yoga thing." She's like, "Oh, come with me to my yoga studio." So I went with her. And she was actually a basketball player at the same time in college with me. And I had just never experienced anything like that before. And it felt at the end magical. Like I slept great. My body felt good. I slept well. I ate well. I just felt relaxed and I wasn't stressed. And there's something to it. So I continued to practice. Fast forward, probably about 8 years. I came out of a training. I was now trained as a yoga teacher, and I was trying to figure out ways to get more of my friends, my community into yoga. My mom was now a yoga teacher, and she was also trying to figure out more people of her generation, her cohort, to get into being into yoga because there were so many benefits for it. And we're like, people aren't accessing this. And they think it's only for certain type of people who are flexible, for example. And how do we break the idea of what yoga is about? And the opportunity happened to, basically, I was looking for a yoga teacher job. And instead of finding a yoga teacher job, I found a space that was available to rent to turn into a yoga studio. And in 1 hour, I thought I was coming for a yoga teacher job and to get some supplies. And an hour later, I walked out. My mother happened to be with me and said, "Did we just talk about opening a yoga studio?" And we did. And that was many years ago. And so that's how we started.
Anything you want to add, Peggy?
Well, I think, and this might be of value to others who are interested in opening a business. One of the things that I believe in, you have to be ready for anything. So if you have a dream, if there's something you want to do, and even if you're not sure that you want to do that, like Eboni knew she wanted to teach yoga, the idea of owning a studio was not necessarily in the near horizon dream, but we kind of had talked about it a little bit. And I had a friend that owned a yoga studio in Madison. And when we walked in there, this was one of those, this was an offer we couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to teach yoga, we could teach and work for somebody else, or we just looked at each other and said, "Hey, I think we're buying a yoga studio."
Yeah.
Because it was just too good to refuse. So I would just say, if you have dreams, don't limit them. Anything's a possibility. If you can think it, you can do it. All you have to do is the work.
And I would just underscore that idea about a dream and a vision. Like if you have one, we literally wrote it down. Like write it down. Don't keep it as an idea in your head. Unknown to each other, we wrote it down in our own journals. Like, oh, one day I'd like to teach, and maybe one day I'll open a yoga studio. And she wrote that in her journal. I think I like to help my daughter open a yoga studio, and teach. So once you write it down, there's some power to that. So as a business owner, like write down what it is you think you want to do, and then you don't know when the doors and the windows will open, but you'll be more ready because you actually already had that idea that's written down as a concrete thing you would like to do. So when that window of opportunity opened for us, that was very small and very short, we're like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? A year from now, we close down the business.
I think that's interesting to both wrote down opening up a yoga studio. Peggy, were you always into yoga, or were you just kind of found
Well, I got into yoga in my 50s. I started doing triathlons in my 50s.
Oh my gosh, good for you.
Yeah, and I actually did Ironman in Wisconsin in 2003. So I got into yoga as a cross training to calm my mind, to relax my muscles. Yoga has so many health benefits. It's unbelievable. And a part of the triathlon team I was involved with, they made yoga available to all of us so we could soothe our body. So that's when I seriously got into it. When I first got into it, I was like 5 years old, and my mother, after watching Jack LaLanne on the black and white TV sets, watched the yoga lady. So I didn't know what that was, but she was doing it. But yeah, that's how I got into it seriously.
Eboni, selecting a location for the brick and mortar business was important.
Yeah.
Were you really considering like Wicker Park, or was it just because you just happened to walk in to that particular studio?
I would say it was on the list of places we had considered before walking into that studio. So when we kind of had a vision and like, oh, one day I would like to open a yoga studio, maybe 5 years from now. I wrote that vision and 3 months later I opened the yoga studio. But so I wasn't expecting it to be 3 months later. I was thinking it was like 2 years, 5 years, later on. Well, where would you open it was the next question. Would it be in Chicago? And there was a lot of different neighborhoods on the list in Chicago, but part of the pragmatic is you also have to think about your customers and your clients who can help you pay your rent. Yeah. So we have to think through the little bit of the market and the demographics of different communities. One, just that's pragmatic, like, can they afford whatever you're going to offer if your service costs something? Or if it doesn't cost anything, is there other people like funders or grantors who are going to be able to pay for it so you can give it away for free? So, we weren't doing a nonprofit foundation, we're doing an LLC. So it was like, okay, how are we going to bring in enough of the resources? And so that's part of the pragmatic, where could we start from? At the same point, we also wanted, our mission is to be very diverse, have a diverse community, have it open, and have a yoga studio that more people feel like it's accessible and welcoming to it, and not just focus on certain demographics. And so there was a few spots in the city when we opened that really had both the economics, but also had the diversity that we really, really wanted, and diversity in any way you want to define diversity. So, multiple ways of diversity, and we wanted it all. And Wicker Park, it just happens to have it's a historical neighborhood in Chicago that has always had like a lot of different diverse families, backgrounds, groupings there. And I had known that from my youth when I was 20, and now 20 years later, it still was that same kind of diversity melting pot neighborhood in Chicago that crosses boundaries and crosses religions and crosses all of that. And so it's like this felt right. It felt right. If it didn't feel right, we may not have taken it up and gone forward with the studio here.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, I was in the process of getting my first yoga teacher certification. And so my final project, I decided I was going to do a market study, and my project was to develop a business plan for a yoga studio. So as a part of that, I did all the market analysis and data analysis, and I picked Chicago. So I went through and did a business analysis looking at firmographics, demographics, cultural diversity. Those were my variables that I looked for. And I also looked at some other studies of why people do yoga and where they do it, and convenience and income had a lot to do with it. So that's how we ended up with Wicker Park. Just to expand on what Eboni had, it was trifecta. It had all the variables.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. So this is a family-owned and operated business, the two of you.
Right.
Can you tell our attendees what it's like? What are some of the pros and cons of working with the family? And whose idea was it to work together on this business venture?
It definitely was a joy. It was a very shared 50-50 idea.
Yeah.
It wasn't me pushing mama, and mama wasn't pushing her baby. It was really, really a collaboration. We both were practicing yoga. We went to trainings together for yoga. We both enjoyed being together and talking about yoga and practicing and thinking about ways that more people can experience it. And then as we just shared, both of us had a vision, about how we could make that idea of more people practicing it in a welcoming space happen. Given that we were both on the same page around it, I mean, my mom already said I'm her only child. So I didn't have to worry about like sibling rivalry, like, oh, mom's doing that with you and not me, like it's just I'm her. That's it. She's my only mama, I'm her only child. And we've always had a very, very good relationship. We've always done activities together in a way that just was natural. Triathlons, used to do triathlons together and races together again. We used to swim together. We used to do dance class together. I don't really remember a time of us not doing things. Yes, there's been times where like, do I really want my mommy to do this with me? But I usually say, I'm her only child. If it's not me, who? So it's been, I would say for us, we have a very good relationship. We are able to turn on, I called her mama, but around the yoga studio, some people don't even realize we're mother and daughter, because I often, just without thinking, start calling her Peggy, 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 Peggy. It's just like a switch that happens when we're there, because we're in work mode. We can clearly communicate like, okay, I've got yoga business to talk about. And then we're in business mode. And then, are we done? Is there anything else for yoga business? No. Okay, now let's talk about I got some gossip. Okay, and then we go into mama family mode. So we have very clear boundaries, I think, around when we're business partners and when we are like family partners. Obviously, you cannot separate completely either one of them, but I think we navigate it pretty well. So for me, it's a blessing. It's also as a business owner, it's really important to have, if you're going to go in a partnership with somebody as you open a business, make sure it's a partner you trust.
Yeah.
And that you feel like you can communicate clearly and directly about all aspects of the business. And if you can't, that could potentially set you up with a real difficult growth trajectory, or perhaps no growth at all for your business. You got to trust who you are in business with money and staff and legalities and all taxes, 120%. And I am very lucky that I trust my mom. Literally, she gave me life, but with my life. And I believe that's mirrored and reflected right back, which makes it very, very good. So family or no family, trust whoever you're going to be in business with. And if you don't trust them or there's a question mark, then you reconsider whether or not that's the right partnership.
That's great.
Yeah.
Peggy, there are
Yeah.
many misconceptions when it comes to yoga, such as yoga is hard or you need to be flexible. How do you make a newcomer, such as someone like myself, in your studio feel comfortable? And tell us a little bit of some of the classes that are offered.
Okay. Well, first of all, yoga is life. And that's usually how I approach it with someone who is really, I don't know if I can do this. I'm too old. I'm a guy. There's nothing but women here. What do I wear? Blah, blah, blah. And I just tell them, yoga is an old practice and it was designed around keeping a person healthy for life. It was monks that and priests that meditated all the time, and they would sit it all the time 5,000 years ago. So how do they have enough strength to sit for 8 to 12 hours and worship? And that's how yoga postures were invented and developed. There are all types of yoga. You don't have to be flexible for yoga. In fact, yoga will increase your flexibility. All ages, all shapes, all size. And I'm not ashamed to say it, approaching my 74th year in life, I tell people who are my age, my cohort, that look, I'm 74 and I'm leading you in this power flow class and I'm squatting down and getting you to squat down in an Asian squat with me. And they're like, what? And I said, hey, it's the only fountain of youth I know that works. And that's how I convince a lot of older people, younger people, people with disabilities. I was teaching a woman who just had a stroke, who was 69 years old, in my class last Friday night. And she said, I don't know if I can do this. I said, I know that you can. Come on, we're all going to sit on the floor. And there's enough variety in poses and styles of yoga that there's something for everyone.
That's great. Thank you for that. Thank you. Eboni, anything you wanted to add?
It reminds me of one of my first teaching classes. I had an older gentleman, somewhere between 40s or 50s, had that same fear. Like, I heard this is supposed to be good for me. I'm trying to de-stress my life, but I can't do anything. And well, all you need to do is breathe. Can you breathe? And they laugh. I'm like, you're still breathing if you're alive. So if you can breathe, you can do yoga. And that gentleman said, yes, I can breathe. I'm like, well, let's just start there. And it was a power class, whatever, but there's so many different ways you can offer a style for a person. And so he started by sitting down, putting his legs up the wall and relaxing and breathing. And he then kept coming. He's like, that was nice. I'm like, we'll come back next week. And he just kept coming back. And then a change started to happen. Eventually over months, he started to do something. But people who are deaf, I have people who are blind, people who have no legs, people who have steel in their back, people who are young, people who are old. all can practice yoga and as long as you can breathe, you can do it.
That's great. Thank you for that. This question is for both of you. Your business has a social impact component to it. Why was this important to both of you? And can you share some of the organizations that you have supported over the years?
You want to start that, Peggy, and then I'll.
Well, it was socially important to us for a couple of reasons. I have a background and history of being a social activist when I was young and fought for various causes, social causes, freedoms, equality. Every person is a person regardless of their religion, their politics, their gender, their preferences, their abilities. And I don't like to think of it as disabilities, it's abilities. Every one of us has a different ability. As long as we can breathe, that's an ability. So that was very important to me. And I think health and fitness is one of the most important things there is. If you don't have your health, it's a very challenging life, and especially in these times. So it was important. We offer classes that are anywhere from free to low cost to just make this available and affordable. So, you know, I might not have a lot of money. Maybe I'm on the layoff after the last merger, but I can come and take a $15 community class, or I can come and take a student class for free. So we wanted it to, you know, not only to make ourselves a little bit more aware and available to people regardless of their means. And we even have work exchange programs where people can, in exchange for doing some small things around the studio, they can get a free classes. So we wanted to do that. There's various community organizations that we partner with. We partner with the city parks. We have partnered in the past every summer to provide free yoga for everybody that's in Wicker Park. Just come to the park when the weather gets good and come out and we and our teachers and we support that to do that. The Humane Society, the Paws organizations, the Cancer Society. There are some others that Eb has more contact with directly that I'm missing some, and I'd like her to share those.
Yeah, I mean, other organizations we have given money. We do fundraising classes. We used to do this quite a bit before the pandemic. The pandemic, as you know, you could guess, economically even made it hard for us yoga studio. But before that, we were very active constantly, like the Wicker Park Community Shelter, Francis Homeless Society, the Connections for Abused Women and Children. We really wanted to focus on organizations that were supporting populations that needed an extra lift up, you know. And so those have been some of our favorite ones. We've also done, like she said, the Humane Society, One Tail at a Time, specifically is one of the organizations, again, who are pretty much giving away a lot of their services for free. And so they need money to support to do that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Many of our attendees are seeking capital. That's one of our very most common questions that people ask our department. If I want to start my business, how do I secure the capital to be able to open the business, sign the lease, put down the deposits, do whatever rehab needs to be done, hire staff? So tell us, when you look back on the 11 years, what were some of your financial obstacles, and what advice can you offer for someone who is having issues with getting a loan to open their business?
I'll briefly say something, and then I'm going to hand it to the CFO of Ebb and Flow, my mother. There's two main avenues for capital. You can look for loans, and I know the city provides some support about how you would go about doing that to find some loans for different types of businesses. And there's also special entrepreneurship loans for new businesses, for minority businesses, for women-owned businesses. So I definitely encourage people to use the resources that the city and also I think the state provides for those types of businesses. The other places are your self-financing. and you're self-financing through, your own savings, through some people use their own credit cards. I don't recommend that route, but whatever you're trying to fund up the rate, I think either one has its pluses and minuses to it. Neither one is great. And it really, the financing, I'll just say, and I'm going to hand this off to Maya, depends on what is the business you're in? What is the goal of your business? What do you see the kind of revenue you need or money coming in to pay for things like rent, insurance, staffing, payroll, what have you, taxes? We opened Ebb and Flow knowing that it wasn't going to necessarily pay for our rent. So, if you need a business that's going to actually pay for you to buy your own food and your own rent and your own children's health care and so forth, like keep that in mind then in terms of where you think about financing. I have another job and career, I still do, I've had it for 11 years, that helps to pay my rent. And so that I didn't have to draw upon it. There's pluses and minuses on that too. Shark Tank will tell you that. But, you have to kind of figure out, again, what your vision and goal for the business and the type of business you have, for what kind of return you can get for whatever investment. Same when you get a loan, you're going to have to pay that loan back. So those are some of my advice. Let me hand that off to Peggy.
Thank you.
Okay, one of the things that's personally important to me, and it goes back to my activist days, is building generational wealth. And in particular, in the African American community. Historically, and we all know the reasons, we have not been able to generate multi-generational wealth. And when we have, history tells you our wealth gets destroyed, has historically been destroyed. And there's a number of examples of that. And I don't need to get into it here. But almost all historical efforts for Black people as a society to build their wealth has been destroyed by the system. So that was very important to me. This is my second entrepreneurial effort. I owned a restaurant and a club with one of my second husband for 18 years, and ran that after he passed away for another 2 years. I believe in self-financing, and I'll tell you why. And it depends on what kind of business. If it's a manufacturing or capital intensive business, you have no choice but to seek an SBA loan. There are very good terms on a small business administration loan. Just understand that comes with very strict performance measures and monitoring. And you have a debt load to carry. So that debt load becomes a part of your operating expenses, and what you charge and your prices has to generate, you have to bring in enough revenue to pay off that debt. But for capital intensive businesses, that's been very useful, like manufacturing or parts and materials, because that inventory has a value. So that inventory, and this is maybe a little too deep, but that inventory gives your business a value, so you can borrow against the value of the business. And if you go belly up, all those parts and materials are worth something. So banks and SBA, which is really just a bank with SBA helping to subsidize part of the bank's cost, is more willing to loan you money. How? Or if you're buying property, like at one point in time, we were looking at buying a business, and SBA was very eager to work with us. That deal fell through, not because of SBA, but because of the seller of the property. They sold to somebody else that outbid us. So we lost that piece of property.
And had cash.
And had cash. They didn't need an SBA loan.
Self-financed 100%.
100%. So we self-financed from the very beginning. We knew, the data tells you that most small businesses go under because they can't last a year. They don't have the operating capital. They don't have the cash to finance themselves for a year. So let me just say how important this is, because if you don't need to depend on your revenue, what you're getting in from customers to pay your bills, your rent, your expenses, your insurance, all the things Eboni mentioned, if you don't need revenue from your customers to do that for a year, that gives you the freedom to try certain things, to do some marketing, to invest, to promote yourselves, to promote your brand, to do some charitable things that bring awareness and attention and bring you customers. And that's what we did. We put aside an amount of money, substantial, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars aside, so that all our expenses, including payroll, was covered for a year. That gave us freedom to really do it the way a larger corporation would do it. And since I worked for corporations, I know how it's done. And I've worked in incubators and things as a part of a big corporate situation. We were covering our expenses in 7 months, but we were only covering all our expenses in 7 months because we could front the money to do the marketing, we've done marketing on the subway, on the train. I call them subways because I'm from New York. You guys call them the L's.
Right.
But we had these ebb and flow panels on the L's, and our customers would ride the train and they'd photograph them and put them on social media and send them back to us. That's my yoga studio. That's my yoga studio. So, and it's expensive to advertise on the trains.
Yeah.
We had billboards, but to close this part off, I'd say if you can have somebody else working, that's how most yoga studios do it. Have somebody else in the family working, paying all the bills, so that they don't have to pull money out of the studio to pay the rent, to buy the food. Save. Be prudent. A lot of people, they want the newest car, the next shoes, the new bag. They want to go on all these holidays. If you looked at what you make in a year in your job and you decide I'm saving 50% of that, or I'm going to have in a 2-family household or 2 partners, one of us is going to work and we're going to live on your income, one income. The rest of it we're putting in the bank. In a year or 2, you have enough to self-finance certain kinds of businesses, especially service businesses.
Thank you for that. Let me just talk a little bit about our neighborhood business development centers, such as our chambers of commerce, which we have a partnership with over 70 of them.
Mhm.
Have you worked with any of them? I think you did when you were early on.
Yes.
Early on, we did.
Yeah, and just
They
kind
were
of tell us.
very helpful.
Yes. Yes, the Wicker Park Chamber is one we work for most closely, especially when we first opened. So I definitely encourage that. They just help us to, first, people need to know you opened. If people don't know you have a business, nobody comes. So they were just in terms of just getting the word out. There's a new business in the neighborhood, welcoming them, see them. They're on North Avenue, you go visit that one there. We also did advertising with them. So, it was a shared, so we could pay for the advertising that they had there that we did through the Wicker Park Chamber. They had a lot of networking events. So again, it's another way of helping and letting people know about you. But through one of those network events, I actually had another business owner, woman-owned business owner, who had just opened up her business, Duet Dance Studio, had just opened her in the same neighborhood, and said, I'm going to come to your yoga studio. And she came right, and she's like, I do these free dance events, and you want to learn salsa? I'm like, well, I'll come. That actually ended up creating a joint venture between the two of us that helped us both for the first 4 or 5 years we were open as new businesses. Where I offer something to her dance customers, and then she would offer and have the dance come out, and so it supported us. So that all happened because we networked through the Wicker Park Chamber. So those networking events that they have are really another opportunity to leverage and use. We also did the Wicker Park Advisory Council, which may not be an official business one, but there's advisory councils that work with the chambers that I also highly encourage. That's the ones who help us link to the park.
Thank you. That's good. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say that the city has webinars, and we've attended the webinars. There are resources offered for business planning. I can't stress enough the importance of having a business plan. Having your vision, having your ideas, writing that down, and just the process of going through a business planning process will help you figure out things that you hadn't thought about that you're going to need to think about. And then there are people available to advise you on that. The
Yes.
Small Business Administration has people that will help you put a business plan together.
Mhm.
And a business plan is not words, just words. A business plan also has to have numbers, and you'd be surprised once you start extrapolating what the numbers look like. um, it really does help sharpen what your plan and your vision is.
And I'll just say one more thing. I give it back to you. And this is not paid advertising, but I will absolutely say use the resources, because I've had, unfortunately, friends who just would get even confused about the type of business license they needed to have. They end up getting the wrong business license, open up their business, and it wasn't right, and then they end up, unfortunately, getting in trouble with it, getting fines, is all that, getting themselves out of it, trying to get lawyers, trying to figure it out. But if you don't have a lot of capital and you took all your investment to open the business, now how do you clean up that? Same with taxes, like paying the taxes and when you need to pay the taxes and what kind of taxes. And depending on what you have as your business, there's various types of taxes, even on water bottles, for example, so you got to make sure know that. So you're taking the account of all of that. And the city is helpful for doing that and navigating through all of that.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. I'll give up my department a little bit of a plug. I always say, zoning wise, that's always the most important thing.
Yeah.
Whatever your business activity you're going to take on, make sure that is appropriate for that zoning area that you want to do the business in. And then always come down anytime, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, and meet with one of our business consultants, where folks can kind of lay out what it is they want to do, what their concept is, and then we can kind of figure out which of those licenses makes the most sense, and not have to have you walk out here with 4 or 5 or 6 licenses,
Yeah.
but the 1 or 2 that makes the most sense. So
Yeah.
appreciate
That's it.
that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
also, like if you move into a space and you have to do any build outs of the space, making, the city will help you figure out when you need an architecture, what type of
Permits.
labor you need to
Mhm.
hire, what kind of permits you need. It's a very complex situation, and you can't mom and pop it, go in there and tear out the walls like you're in your house remodeling. You got electrical, you've got plumbing, you've got structural, and you need the city. You have to get things permitted.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we talked a little bit about the advertising on the L cars. Let's talk about how social media has changed, probably since you opened 11 years
Oh
ago.
yeah.
Mhm.
Very important for promoting any business. Can you explain some of your original marketing strategy and how that strategy has changed over your 11-year tenure?
Turn it over to you, Eb.
Yeah, well, when we originally started, like the number one marketing strategy, no matter what you're now, then is a visible business. People walk by, they see you, and they go, oh, that's interesting, and they note it down. That's still walk by, visible business. I think one of the things we have learned is that's really, really important. Sometimes we've even made the choice of having going for the lower rent type of place, which means you're less visible, but then you're less visible means there's less people see you. And then that's going to affect your market. And so that's that's lessons learned for even us sometimes, like, oh, beautiful place, but we're not as visible because you're kind of hidden. So visibility, walk by, marketing, no matter what. 11 years ago, you could put like a little door tag marketing on people's doors, and with the yoga studio schedule and paper, and you go around the whole neighborhood, which is what we did, and put it around the whole neighborhood and people's houses, and that brought in business. I don't think that people throw that away. They even do that now. That won't work nearly as well. So that's billboards. We tried billboards. Those don't work really as well either. I think the L situated specifically close to your business, as long as your business is visible, so they could walk off the L or they see the well. But in some ways, I also just feel like that just reinforces for your current customers that you're actually a legitimate business, because they saw you on the L. Now you must really be legitimate, so I'm going to keep going. So it doesn't always necessarily bring in new customers. It's like, oh, great, you are real, and people like you because you got an L advertisement. So to get new business, social media, it's still the walk by, it's still word of mouth. It's still number one is my friend. My friend went, I loved it, and now I'm bringing more friends. That is still majority of our business. Our growth happens that way. The other ways of marketing reinforces our legitimacy. People want to give their money to a legitimate place that really seems like it's happening. That's, a real, got a vibe. It's got a community. It's got something going on. And then that reinforces the idea of giving my money to that business, which is what social media tends to do for us, which was what currently social media it is. 11 years ago, Facebook was the only social media really in town. Excuse me. Now, that's not really it. People kind of use it, but it depends on your generation and who your customers are. So it might vary. Social media is definitely in there for keeping you legitimate and keeping you real and keeping you in front of people. So you're still visible, even if they're not walking by your actual brick and mortar business, if you have one. So any way you can keep being in front of people, visibility, social media is the top for that. Even it used to be email. Again, like put door tag and I could email people and they would know. And now it's like email, I may not even open it, it's so much junk, but I will skim through my Instagram post and, oh, you had a funny video, that was funny, and it keeps us top of mind.
That's great.
I just want to add to that collateral marketing, and what comes to mind, we did a thing with the Chicago Bulls, and we were their business for the night, and they took all kind of pictures. We were on that teleprompter, whatever they call it, and then they also had a lot of gifts and things that they gave out tickets throughout the studio, free classes, and they had gifts that we could give out at our studio. Now, when I talk about the collateral marketing, we had pictures. What got us the most business and I would say reaction was the social media photos we use of that. So people didn't even go to the Bulls page to see who their businesses of the month were, but they sure saw that Instagram and then I just want to say your marketing is not just for new business. It's for every customer you retain, they're worth more than 10 customers of new business.
Wow.
Because when you can retain a customer, so the L cards in the transit, in the CTA, the Bulls thing that went viral on Instagram, it makes your customers feel good. It's like you gave a party and people came to your house. I feel good about my neighborhood because stuff's happening in my neighborhood. They feel good about their studio because their studio was all over the news. Their studio was getting recognition. So a lot of times we do things, and I will say we didn't go into this business to make money and to retire. Yes, we earned something from it, but we went into this business as a social entrepreneur more than anything else, even though we're a for-profit business. So it's very important to get real clear what your purpose is and what your goals and objectives are.
I just add one more thing with the marketing really quick is that, the idea if you're in a business is called consumer behavior. So you will have to really understand your way the customer or your clients or whoever you think is going to want what you're getting ready to put your shingle out and offer, how they think and how they behave. It's a psychology to it. Every business is going to have a little different psychology to it, but it is, human beings have an idea of what they want and how they want to feel and what they want to be, and that's going to draw them too. So a lot of the marketing is really it's a psychology thing. People, oh wow, you were at the Bulls. The classes must have been packed after the Bulls saw you. Well, no. I don't remember how many tickets I gave away for free yoga classes, and I don't know how many. Very few have come back. But it looks and makes people feel happy, feel like, again, we're legitimate, we're real, we matter, and we do. And it just reinforces that idea. So you are keeping your current customers, and they're happy to bring their friends. You got to check out my place because they were with the Bulls.
Yeah.
You know?
Has your business operation changed? You've been in business for 11 years. Has it changed from pre-pandemic? We're going to the office, waking up early for a class or going home afterwards, versus now people work at home and like, oh, I don't have a Zoom for an hour.
So different.
It's so different.
Yeah, the whole, again, I said consumer behavior. Whose behavior is not different post-pandemic than pre-pandemic? All of us now behave, think, operate in a very different way we did because of the pandemic than we did in 2019. You know, we moved locations. We opened our brand new location after doing a build out in the end of February of 2020, and everything closed down in March of 2020. And so then there was, a good year and a half where we really couldn't, because of the various restrictions and things really weren't opening, and we were just here on Zoom. And people have changed their behavior around exercise. So the whole Ebb and Flow is a fitness boutique, and then consumers and people have changed the way they use fitness. And there's so much more of it is at home. We didn't used to have to compete with online things for yoga. That really wasn't. And now the whole consumer, everybody's got their phone with an app that says, here's a 15-minute yoga class. That's changed the way, again, we have to think about our business, try to pivot it. We haven't figured it out because it's such a quick pivot. We did a little bit. We were on Zoom. We have now all of our classes are live stream and in person. The people who know us best, almost 90% are on Zoom. They don't even come in. And the brand new people who don't know us at all are coming in. The people who have been around with us for 11 years, they're just on Zoom. I know Rob's class, and they turn off the camera, we don't see it. And they're brand new, I don't know who you are. Are you real? Are you a legitimate business? They're coming to the brick and mortar. So it absolutely, we haven't even figured out, but it's totally, completely changed our business. It's changed the fitness business. It's changed the boutique fitness business. Because the world is just so different, and behavior around exercise and how we operate is so different.
Thank you.
Also, behavior around just being close to somebody, except in the drinking establishments on North Avenue. That
hasn't changed that much. No.
Change. But they, the people who come in, even some of our old customers, they come in on Zoom and they'll tell us, well, your classes might be too large. I don't want to be 3 and 4, and I don't want to be 2 feet away from somebody. I just want to have just 4 people in the room. That makes me comfortable. I actually had a client say, well, when you only have 4 or 5 people in a class, that's when I like it the most. And I'm like, oh my God, we can't survive on 4 or 5 people in a class.
Yeah, we can't survive on 4 or 5 people in a class, but that's more of the expectation. So that's really, and then how do you do that? Well, you would have to up the fees if you only have 4 or 5, and nobody wants the fees to be upped. They want them all to go down. So, things cost much, as we all know here, inflation, everything, or rent, everything's costing more. And the consumer wants, of course, for yoga specifically, to cost less. And so we're always trying to balance the expectations to the reality of owning a business.
Yeah, consumers will pay $25 for a lunch and a beverage, but $25 for a drop-in yoga class? They're complaining.
They complain, yeah.
That's good. So this month is Black History Month, and I just want to see if you guys do anything special for Black History Month, if you reflect back on all your accomplishments, if there's anything ebb and flow, we'll recognize and celebrate during the month of February.
I already said this to you a little bit. I feel we're Black all year long, so I'm always celebrating that I have a history that happens to come from the African American experience. And I live that African-American experience all year
That's
long.
great. No, that's
All year long. I always say when people reach out to us, I'm like, we're Black all year long. You don't have to just reach out to us in February, I'm happy to share it. And so we don't do anything special. We might put a quote out there, and we will do a sale at the end of this part of the month, not just because it's Black History, but because it's also our anniversary. So we always do an annual anniversary that just happened to overlap with this Black History and Valentine's Day, which we opened on Valentine's Day 11 years ago.
Happy 11 years in one day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you both again for sharing your business journey with our attendees. And let me just ask you a couple kind of just fun questions. I have to ask, when you're not running a business, what do you do? What do you like to do to relax? And imagine yoga is already kind of relaxing for both of you. But is there something else that you do when you step away from the business just to keep you grounded?
I like to play with this little guy who I've been throwing toys to. This is my little terrier named Marvin.
Hi, Marvin.
So I play with Marvin, and I play the cello and I play the piano.
That's nice. That's great.
I relax by taking care of 2 young children under the age of 6. So
And I appreciate you saying that's relaxing.
yeah, so relaxing. So they definitely keep me busy, and then perhaps I fall asleep on the couch after working 2 jobs and taking care of 2 kids.
Exactly.
But I do like a long walk, and I also do like to meditate. So
that's good. Appreciate that. As this webinar is entitled Empower Hour, please share a piece of advice that can empower our attendees.
Go ahead, Peggy.
Whatever it is that you can vision, that you can imagine, that you think you might want to do, you have everything within you right here and right now to make that real. You just have to do the work. And I'll leave you with a quote from my father. You might not get everything you work for, but you will work for everything you get.
Wow, excellent.
You're going to open a business, make sure you have a passion or a drive or a clear vision for it. It is not going to be easy work, but when you have a vision and a passion, it will not seem as the hard work as it can be. And you always have energy. People will say, I don't know how you have the energy to do what you do, Eboni. We're having ebb and flow, which is a full-time job, having this other job, full-time, 10 kids. I'm like, well, all I'm made of is energy. Yeah. All I'm made of is energy. So when I have a passion, and when you have a passion for something, use that energy to achieve the goals and a vision that you seek for yourself versus doubting that you don't have it to make it happen.
That's great. Both of them very, very encouraging. I appreciate that. Just for our attendees, can you please provide your website, social media, how do they find you, address, etc.?
Yes, so we're at 2125 West North Avenue in Wicker Park. We're on the 2nd floor, so you go through a beautiful courtyard and you will find us there. You can find our website at www.ebandflow, that's 1B, like my name, Eboni, that's the play on name, ebandflowyoga.com. From there, you can find our phone numbers and our email. I'll also type it in the chat box for us as well. You'll find us on social media. I send by just putting @ Ebb and Flow Yoga, and we'll pop right up on Instagram or on Facebook for you.
Well, we've almost taken up the full hour. Do you guys have time for just a couple questions?
Yes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Stella,
Okay.
can I turn it
This
back
is
to you?
actually not a question, it's a comment. I've been thinking about getting into yoga for 30+ years. I think you two are my appointed time to start. I am 64 years old.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Question.
Yeah.
Where exactly can I go to get assistance with my business plan and marketing plan?
Is that a question for us at BACP?
Yeah, I believe that's a BACP question.
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to make sure they follow us on our website and sign up for our webinars. We host webinars every Wednesday afternoon and Friday morning. And part of that webinar series, twice a week, part of that webinar series, we always have how to put together a business plan. We'll have financial planning, and we have experts that come in and teach these various webinars. So you can always go to chicago.gov/BACP. And if you can put that in the chat, so that'll be helpful to those asking. I don't know if you have anything to add in terms of that question.
I will put the chat for how to obtain your business license and permit in. I will put the information in the chat. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There was one question in the chat box just to address, if you want us to do that. I have a question for someone. Could yoga become a religion? You may have noticed that Peggy said earlier that it started from people who were in a religion to help them meditate, but it is not a religion itself. So it's not about a deity to gods or spirituality. It really is about getting better into your own physical health. Some people have then used that to help them and get better in their religion. Some people do not. So it is not, it's a completely secular, non-religious thing.
It's about your own mental and physical well-being and connecting those parts together.
Anything else from your end, Stella?
It looks like there's a question in the Q&A. Nope, it's the same thing about religion. I believe that's the same question.
Mhm.
And I think I see one more. Do your clients appreciate you having a social mission and an impact?
Yes.
Yes.
The clients that are drawn to us usually are all to relate to that. So, you again, knowing your customers and knowing the different segmentation your customers may have. Yoga, there's different yoga for different people because we're all different human beings with different ideas and visions and perceptions and so forth. And those clients that come to us definitely relate to one, that we're welcoming, that we're diverse, that they can see everybody from a 70-plus-year woman to a 21-year woman all in the same class practicing yoga together, and that we are about a community, not only within the studio, but connecting to the larger community, whether that's Wicker Park, but also the mission of supporting people in Wicker Park so that they can have more opportunities or support. So yeah, we definitely have people who absolutely see that on our website, hear us talk about it, part of it, and it makes them feel positive about what we're doing.
And when people come into our studio, one of the things they first notice is that we almost look like an international setting. We look like a community that I grew up in New York, where you see all colors of people, you see all genders and all persuasions, you see all abilities, and people who want to be in an environment of that inclusiveness. Those are the people that seek us out.
Well, I appreciate the all abilities.
There was a question about the clientele. I don't know where it was. I was going to type it. It takes a couple of years. So I would say at least took us, definitely a solid 12 months, but I would say it was probably in our second year that we felt like we had a good foundation of regular clients and a community. So it doesn't happen quickly. So you have to have patience, and then you have capital then to support that. It's going to be a low buildup before you're like, oh yeah, this is our clientele. Yeah. And then it faded away in the pandemic, and we had to build it all brand up like a brand new business again.
Like brand new, yeah.
Well, thank you, Eb and Peggy, and thank all of our attendees for joining us today for our Empower Hour. It was absolutely delightful, and thanks for giving us such energy. Even though we didn't do yoga class, I feel like I got such positive energy just out of this hour that I very much appreciate it. You can watch today's Empower Hour on our YouTube channel by visiting youtube.com/Chicago BACP. And for more information on our next Empower Hour, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Thank you again, Eboni and Peggy. It's been really just a delight, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.